an overview of Maya objects. Hello again. In the previous tutorials, we learned about the most intuitive interface elements Maya has to offer us, and the easy ways of customizing the workspace for the betterment of our workflow. From here on, we'll go and work in the viewport, or the workspace, and play with the objects in the scene. Okay, no time to wait. Let's go ahead and learn how to bring the Maya objects to our scene. Now we have a new scene open here in Maya, so go to Create menu over here, and just tear it off by clicking these lines over here, and just move this menu a bit so that it doesn't interfere with our scene. Now, in these menus, we have lots of types of primitives, such as NURBS primitives, Polygon primitives, and so on and so forth. If I click the NURBS primitives, I may get some sub-options, such as sphere, cube, and so on. These are the default geometrical shapes for the NURBS geometry that Maya has in it. Now, if you go to the Polygon primitives option, which is below the NURBS primitives, I get the same name of shapes similar to the NURBS options. Well, one might think that's quite unnecessary to have these shapes twice, isn't it? Well, don't look at it that way. It's because that these individual objects are made of different geometries. In other words, they differ in the components they possess, which we'll discuss in greater detail in the lessons to come. But as of now, let's just take it as geometrical objects. Now, to the other objects. Actually, now we're viewing our scene by default lights, which Maya has. As we progress, we'll learn about how to set up lights. For that, we need to create some lights, don't we? Well, we can do that from this same Create menu, and here's the option for us to create lights. If I click over this light option, watch that we get 6 different types of lights. Maya offers us these lights to light our scene, all of which we'll briefly discuss in the lighting lesson. Now, if I just click over any of these light options, see that we get a light placed at the center of the origin. Not only that, but we don't need cameras to view our scene. As we previously described, we're viewing the scene through inbuilt cameras, and at a later point in time, we'll need cameras placed still to look at the scene. It's impossible to keep the default cameras at stake since we have to adjust our view at several positions to work with our scene. For that matter, we'd also require our scene to be animated with cameras. For precise handling and manipulation of our scene, we can't rely on the default cameras. We need individual cameras to work with them, and for all that, we'll need to create some cameras. Now, we can also create it from the same Create menu we have here, and exactly in the Cameras option. If I just click the Camera option, watch that we have 3 types of cameras, and of course, we'll take a look in detail at them as we move on to cameras. Not only that, we can also create curves from the set of options over here, and we can also create text from here and so on. Now, don't worry about all of that. We'll discuss all of those in the lessons to come. With that, we're almost to the end of this tutorial. In the next tutorial, we'll go ahead and learn about bringing primitives into our scene. Creating primitives. In the previous tutorial, we took an overview of the objects that Maya has by default. In this lesson, we'll learn about creating those primitive objects which we saw in the previous tutorial, which is nothing but bringing these objects to our scene. All right, let's forge on into this tutorial. We have a scene open here in Maya, and we'll create a sphere of polygon geometry, which is nothing but the polygon primitive. Of course, go to the Create menu, and in the Polygon Primitives drop-down list, just click Sphere option once. Right-click, and then watch that the cursor changes with the plus icon, and there's a short note at the center of the interface stating to drag on the grid. Maya prompts us to drag over the cursor over the grid to create the object. Well, we'll do as it says. In the viewport, go ahead and click and hold the left mouse button and drag. Now, don't let down the cursor as of yet. Just drag in and out with the left mouse button held. Watch the object dimensions vary as we drag the cursor. At the desired size, let down the left mouse button, and a sphere is created in the viewport in a 3D space of Maya. Now, let's go ahead and create a cone. Go to Polygon Primitives and hit Cone. Now, watch what you see in the viewport. It states something. It's nothing, but you have to drag the cursor twice. First for the basic shape, the second time for its height. Let's go ahead and drag the cursor once as we let down the cursor. Now watch it as it prompts us to drag the cursor again for height. And we'll do as Maya orders us. Now as we complete our drag, a cone has been created in our scene. this is how we create objects. Now let's go to Polygon primitives again and go to the bottom over here where the interactive creation option is checked. Click it once to uncheck the option, and now again go and click over the same sphere. Watch what happens. An object is created at the center of the origin, which is nothing but the 0 units of x, y, and z, which is also at the center of the scene. Well, how have we created a new object without dragging the cursor? And also, where do the divisions that we have in the objects come from? Now, if you go to the same option, you can watch a small box next to the sphere option, which is nothing but the option box for the polygon sphere. Go ahead and click there. Now, what are these options? Well, actually, these are the settings with which we created an object right now. And here you can set the divisions for height and width, and also for the radius of the sphere. If you click and drag this slider near the radius, watch the value gets updated in the text field. You can also type in a desired value here in this text field. Similarly, you can alter the other options as well. Now, with these settings, you can keep on hitting apply to create any number of objects, or hit create to create a single object, and then exit this window. Similarly, you can create other objects in the create menu with the desired settings as we prefer. For now, just go ahead and practice the ways of creating primitive objects with different settings in their option box, and different methods of creating what we've just learned. Before going on to the next tutorial, let's complete this lesson with how to select and deselect an object. Now earlier, we had either clicked once or marquee selected over an area to select that object. Either you can click this icon over here at the top of the toolbox to go to the selection mode, or you can hit Q from your keyboard for the same results. Not only that, you can also go ahead and click this tool over here and click and drag over any area to select the object within that area. All the objects within the selected area do get selected. Now, if you wish to deselect an object, just hit once anywhere in the interface other than the object. Watch as the objects get deselected. Pretty cool, eh? Now, with enough of that, let's go ahead and learn about the different types of ways that we can view an object in our next tutorial. If you have a question like what's there in viewing an object, well, yes, Maya has. What we'll get to know about when we go to the next tutorial. So, what are we waiting for? Let's go see what else Maya has for us. Viewing objects. Previously, we had a brief look at creating objects. In the end, we'd made a mention on viewing objects. Well, what's in there in viewing objects, eh? We'll understand what that's all about as we move on through this lesson. Now, we have a scene, and at the center of which there is an object. Now, with interactive creation being unchecked, let's go ahead and create a polygon sphere from the shelf, just by clicking this icon once. Watch that we're able to view only the object that we just created. We can't see the object that was there previously in the scene, even if you tumble, or in whichever way you change the view of the scene. Now watch what happens when I hit this square icon over here in the viewport. And now if I zoom in closer, you can see both the objects in the form of wireframes. You can also hit 4 on your keyboard to go to wireframe mode. If you go ahead and click this small object, you can even select it. In this way, Maya offers you an interactive workspace. You can get back that shade mode either by hitting 5 on your keyboard, or go ahead and click this blue colored icon over here once so as to select it, which is the smooth shaded mode. You can also hit this button over here next to the smooth shade icon for wireframe on shaded mode. When I deselect the object, watch here in this mode as I can view any shaded object along with their divisions in the deselection mode. You can also view an object in the X-ray mode. Now I hope you know what an X-ray view is. Now click this wireframe on the shaded icon once again to bring back the object to the smooth shaded mode again. Now go to the shading option over here on the top of the viewport, and in the drop-down list, click this X-ray option once. Now watch the object that I just clicked in. It appears more transparent from the shaded mode. Now this is the X-ray view of the object. Now I've got a cool thing to tell you here. So far we're viewing the object from different forms without changing the shape of the object. Now we can transform the shape of the object itself to view it in a different mode. Aha, something, eh? That's what it's all about here in Maya. Now let's explore that, shall we? Delete all the objects in the scene by selecting them and hitting delete on your keyboard, and click this icon once to create a polycube from the shelf. Now go to the same shading option in the viewport and click X-ray option once again to uncheck that and get back the object to the smooth shade mode once again. Now with the object selected, hit 3 on your keyboard. Watch what happens. The object changes to a sphere. Well, what's happening here, eh? Well, we'll break this code now. Actually, it's the same cube and not the sphere. Actually, the object is in smooth mode. If you watch the object carefully, only the object's shape has changed, not the dimensions. Unlike the previous view, which is termed in the linear mode and which has sharp defined edges here, in the smooth mode, the object has smooth edges. Now you can take the object back to the linear mode by hitting 1 on your keyboard. Not only that, with the object selected, if you hit 2 on the keyboard, you can view the object as a semi-smooth object. Thus, you can switch between objects' morphology and work in the view that best suits you. But make sure that the object is selected before switching these 3 modes which we've just described. Thus, Maya offers users a very interactive way of approaching a scene for the betterment of the workflow. In our coming lessons, we'll learn about how to transform an object in the 3D space of Maya. Translating objects. The 3 most important attributes of an object are translation, rotation, and scale, without which you cannot work in Maya. Now let's see how to translate an object in 3D space in Maya. Here in this scene we have a cube. Just marquee select the object and double-click over this icon in the toolbox, which is the Move tool. Now you get a gizmo over the object, which is nothing but the Transform gizmo, and some settings to the right of the viewport. Now double-click over the Reset Tool button over the top right in the Tool Settings box. What it does is it brings all the properties of the Move tool to its default. Always have the habit of resetting any tool before using it by double-clicking the Reset option for any tool in the Tool Settings window. Now, close the toolbox by clicking the small arrow over the top left of the toolbox over here. Now, I'd like to remind you at this point that what we have learned in the 3D coordinates lesson, that is, red, green, blue colors correspond to the X, Y, and Z axes respectively, which also apply to the Transform, Rotate, and Translate gizmos. Okay, now let's learn how to transform an object. Just click over any of the gizmo axes and notice that it turns yellow. If you click any axis, it turns yellow to show that axis has been highlighted and the transformation is going to be done in that direction. Now just click and hold and drag that axis. Watch what happens as you click and drag. The other 2 axes disappear, enabling you to move only in that direction which you choose. Now, as you let down the cursor, the 3 gizmos appear once again. Also, watch the help line as you translate the object. The value updates as you keep moving and stops at a point where you can complete the translation. These are the values where the object currently resides in this 3D space. With the same object selected in Transform mode, if you watch closely at the intersection of 3 gizmos, you can see a small square. Well, what's that for? Well, if you press and hold that small square and orbit the object, you can see all the 3 axes get translated at the same time in the help line, and the object is placed in 3D space in these values that are in the help line. Now, what if you want to translate the object in 2 axes at the same time? Let's explore this. Again, with the same object selected in Translate mode, go to any of the orthographic view. Press and hold the Control button on your keyboard and drag any one of the axes of the Translate gizmo. And watch what happens in the help line. The 2 axes can be transformed individually in this orthographic view. It transforms together. Amazing, isn't it? Maya has such a potential to offer its users, the unimaginable workspace. Now let's explore the other ways of translating this object. You can also translate any object by typing in desired values in the status line over here. Now let's see how to do that. With the object selected in Translate mode, I insist again the gizmo should be Translate mode and type in a value of 30 in the text field adjacent to the Y-axis, and then press Enter. Now watch what we've got. The object has been displaced to the 30th unit point in the positive Y-axis in the workspace. Thus, without touching the gizmo, you can translate an object in any desired axis in exact position. Now I'm again entering a value of 30 in the empty field adjacent to the Y-axis, which I had previously entered, and press Enter in the keyboard. The object stays in the same place. Now, One can ask what else to expect. Well, click and hold the arrow mark to the left of the X-axis text field in the shelf and drop the arrow to the relative transform in the drop-down list, and then let the mouse select that. If you drop down the options again, you can see the black dot has been placed adjacent to the relative transform, stating that relative transform mode has been selected. Previously, it was in absolute transform mode by default. Now with the object selected again, enter a value of 30 in the Y-axis text field and press Enter on the keyboard. Watch what happens. The object has been displaced further. The object has been displaced further 30 units in the Y-axis to be placed at the 60th unit in 3D space. Thus, we can even translate an object relatively. And this can all be done to all axes. With that, we've come to the end of this lesson. In the next tutorial, we can see the other two transformation tools, the Rotate and Scale tools. Transforming objects. Rotate and Scale. Hello again. With the translation of object being learned in the previous lesson, let's go ahead and explore the other transformation tools, the Rotate and Scale, in this tutorial. Alright, we have a scene open with an object at the center of the scene. Go ahead and marquee select the object. Now go to the icon over here, which is simply the Rotation tool, and double-click it to go to the Rotation Option Tool Settings box, and get the rotation gizmo over the object. You can also hit E from your keyboard to go to the rotation mode. Now watch the gizmo over the object. It has kinds of circles. This is the rotation tool. Before going to the rotation gizmo, let's go ahead and reset the tool by double-clicking over the Reset Tool option over here in the toolbox and closing it off by hitting the small arrow over here. Now, I'm insisting that you reset any tool before using it, and by this way you can create a flawless work. Now, similar to the transform gizmo, you have a tricolor gizmo for rotation tool, with which we can rotate an object. Now, hopefully you know what I'm going to say. Yes, the three colors, red, green, and blue, do represent X, Y, and Z axes, respectively. If you click and drag over any axis, you can rotate the object in the positive or negative direction along that axis. Similarly, you can rotate the other two axes. Also, we already mentioned the rotation axis changes to yellow color, stating the rotation takes place only in that axis. Now, if you watch closely, you'll have a blue-colored gizmo in addition to the other three rotation axes. If you click it, like any other axis, watch that it also will turn yellow. Now, what was that? It's nothing but the rotation gizmo to rotate the object in all three directions all together at the same time. Watch as you rotate it. You can see the values getting updated in all three axes in the help line. All the other transformation options that we saw in the Translate tool, like the Relative Transform, Absolute Transform, they apply to the rotation gizmo as well. Now, I'd ask you to go ahead and practice with those. With that, let's go and learn the last of the transformation tools, and that is the Scale tool. Now hit Ctrl-Z on your keyboard, which is the shortcut key for the undo option, until you get back to the initial position of the object. Alright, now we have the object in its primary position of creation. Go to this icon over here and click twice. Make sure that you are in object selection mode before clicking over that. Now reset the tool and close this tool option window. Now let's go to the object. This is the translation tool gizmo. You can also evoke the translation tool by hitting R from your keyboard. Similar to other transformation tools, you can scale this object by clicking and dragging over any of the axis box over here. If you want to scale the object in all axes, just click and drag this box, like this, at the center of the scale gizmo. As you scale, you can see the values getting updated in all three axes at the help line. The other transformation methods applied to the Translate and Rotation option do apply to the Scale tool as well. Go ahead and keep practicing until you're familiar with all the transformation tools. Now, hopefully we're making good progress in Maya, so let's keep going with the flow that we're in and continue Maya very soon. Channel box. Previously, we learned about various types of transformation and various ways of transforming an object. Here, we're going to learn another interactive part of the interface, the channel box. Before entering into this part, it's my duty to insist you again and again to go ahead and practice those transformation tools which we demonstrated in the earlier lessons, until you're able to work with them with your eyes closed. With that, let's move on to the channel box. Now we have a scene open here in Maya. Go ahead and hit this button here at the very right of the status bar, which is nothing but the Show or Hide Channel Box Layer Editor window. You can hit it once to show the Channel Box Layer Editor window, or hit once to hide when it's on. Okay, now let's go to this Channel Box window. But look, we haven't got any attributes to work with. Always be in the Object Selection mode to show the attributes of any chosen object. Now we have these three icons at the top of the channel box. What are they? Well, if you hit this first icon, you can view only the channel box. Now click this second icon and you can see only the Layer Editor window, which we'll discuss in the coming lessons. And if you go ahead and click this third icon, you can see the window is split in two, with channel box at the top and Layer Editor window below. Obviously, these are done for the betterment of our workflow. You can work with any of these orientations which suits you best. For now, we'll view only the channel box, of course by clicking the first icon once. And if you have a look at this channel box first window, it itself is split into two. At the top, we have the option for transforming the object, and in the bottom window, we can modify our object even after its creation, which we will see in the next tutorial. For now, we'll take a look at the top half of the channel box, which contains nothing but the transformation attributes of the objects and the options to manipulate them. Now we have the transformation attributes of the object and also an attribute for the visibility of the object. And the name here, P-Sphere1, which is nothing but Polysphere1, the default name along with which Maya created the object. And we'll discuss names and their hierarchy in which they were created in the coming lessons. Now with the object selected, we can go ahead and type in a value in any of the transformation options here and hit enter so as to transform the object to that value. For example, if I enter a value of 10 in the text field adjacent to the translate X, watch as I hit enter. The object is transformed to 10 units in the X direction to precisely mention, in the positive X. You can also go ahead and type in negative values to transform in the negative direction. Now watch as I click over the text itself. Watch, they turn black as I click over them, which portrays this particular attribute has been selected. Now let me click over the Translate Z and take a closer look at the object. Watch the gizmo is in translate mode and the Z-axis of this translate mode gets highlighted in our yellow color. Go ahead and middle click and drag the mouse in the interface with the selection on. Now watch what happens. With the value getting updated in the channel box over here, the object gets transformed in the Z direction in our viewport. Now the object resides in the 3D space of this value of the Z-axis. Now if you watch carefully, when I click and drag, the value of Translate Z in the helpline and the channel box do match for this object, both absolutely the same. Thus we can authenticate the position of our object on its current location. Wonderful, isn't it? Yeah, that's what Maya's all about. It's in your hands to just keep on exploring it. Now in the next tutorial, we'll go ahead and learn about the ways of modifying objects even after creation with none other than the channel box. Modifying objects with channel box. Hello there. In the previous tutorial, we learned about the transformation attributes in the channel box and the ways of manipulating them. In this tutorial, we'll learn about the input option node of the channel box. Input options are basically to modify an object itself, even after its creation. Now one might ask, is it possible? Well, the answer is with the input box, yes, it is possible. Before moving on to the input box, let's learn about our left out attribute over here in the transformation attributes in the channel box, which is the visibility attribute. Now we have a scene here with this object at the center of the scene. Now with the object selected, over here in the visibility option in the channel box, just type in off and then hit enter. Well, the object is gone. Actually, it is present in this scene, but we can't view it because we've set its visibility attribute to off. Now if you go ahead and type on in the same option box and hit enter, once again, we'll view the object. And now to the input box over here at the bottom half of the channel box. With the object selected, if I just click open this Polysphere 1 node, Watch, we get several options. If you remember, actually these are the inputs with which we created an object with specific settings in the option box of a sphere primitive in the Create menu. Now, as we get the options, we can go ahead and modify the geometry of the object. Similar to the method we used in transforming an object in Channel Box, just select the Radius Text option here, and middle-click and drag in the interface to the right or to the left. Watch as you drag, you get the arrow mark. You can drag it to the left or right so as to decrease or increase the value respectively. You can also increase or decrease the subdivisions of the object over here with the same protocol. You can also type in a value for the same. Thus, Maya offers you amazing control over the object even after the object has been created. Now, what if we want to increase or decrease all of the values at the same time? Watch as I click and drag over the options altogether. All the options get highlighted. Now, if I hold the control on my keyboard and click over the selection, watch that I can add to the selection or remove the selected option if I click over the selected option again. Now, if I click and drag the cursor in the interface, watch all the attributes can be modified at the same time. Thus, Maya offers its users ample numbers of ways to work with the object for a productive workflow. Alright, with that we come to the end of the lesson, and with enough of that we'll go ahead and take a look at the functions of our layer editor. Organizing objects with layers. Previously we learned about the amazing ways of transforming and modifying an object with Channel Box. Well, enough of Channel Box, let's go ahead and learn about Layer Editor and its wonderful functionalities in this lesson. With no further delay, let's go straight ahead to this scene where we have an object selected with the Channel Box Layer Editor window open. Let's go and click the second icon at the top of the Channel Box Layer Editor window to get the Layer Editor window alone, so feasible to work with just the Layer Editor window. First, let's learn the importance of the Layer Editor window. As the name suggests, Layer Editor is to keep the object organized in a scene. Now, what does that mean? Well, for example, if you're working in a scene which contains apartments, playgrounds, trees, lampposts, etc., it will mean difficult to find a particular set of objects as they're placed all around the scene. For that matter, we can go ahead and place the particular objects in unique layers, and at any time we can view only the specific objects we'll be working with, and can hide the other layers in which the objects you are not working with are placed. In this way, we can keep a scene very well organized and can avoid messing with the other objects or losing an object while you're working with a huge number of objects in a scene. Now, if you have a problem understanding this, let's go ahead and have a hands-on experience through this tutorial, after which we'll be able to efficiently work with layer editors. Now, we'll move into the scene where we have an object in the viewport. Select the object and hit this icon at the last over here at the top of the Layer Editor window. Click on and see what it does to create a layer named Layer 1 with the object selected contained in this layer. Now this object is placed in Layer 1. If you click the letter V over here once in the layer box, watch what happens. The letter V disappears. The most important thing is that the object too disappears. Well, what was that? Well, V stands for visibility, and thus clicking once over the area hides the object. If you click it again, you get back the V and the object again as well. Not only that, if you double-click over that layer, for that matter any layer, you will get this small window. Now here in this window, you can type in a name for that layer. We can also give colors for a layer for its unique identification. Now if I hit Save, we'll get the new name for the layer, and the color we choose does appear in this Layer Editor box. In this way, we can keep our scene very well organized. Now let's learn how to bring objects in and out of the layer and all the other things related to that kind of stuff. Now let's go ahead and create a new layer by clicking this icon, which just creates an empty layer with no objects in its room. Now go ahead and create any new object from the shelf. Now we have a new object, and with this object selected, go ahead and right-click and hold this over the newly created layer. Now we get lots of options, right? We'll just drop the cursor over and add selected objects. Oops, nothing happened, did it? Well, don't take Maya that lightly. If you go ahead and click this visibility icon once, watch what the newly created object disappears. Thus, the object is placed onto that layer. And in this way, we can add any number of objects in a layer. Now, how do you remove an object from a layer? Well, you remove the same object the way that we added them to the layer. Again, with the object in selection mode, you right-click over this layer where the object has been placed, and then click the Remove Selected Objects. There you go, simple as that. Now if I go ahead and click the same visibility icon, watch the object doesn't disappear, it still remains in the scene. Alright, with that we've come to the end of this lesson. Now in the next tutorial we'll take a look at some other options that we have in Layer Editor.